She was the most beautiful woman in the kingdom, and she knew with absolute certainty that one day she would not be. There is a particular kind of fear that belongs only to people who have built their identity around a single thing. For the Queen, that thing was beauty. Not vanity in the way we usually mean it, not preening or self-admiration, something deeper and more desperate than that. Beauty was her authority. It was the reason she had been chosen. It was the currency she had traded on her entire life. And she understood, long before anyone said it aloud, that currencies lose their value. She owned a mirror, not an ordinary mirror, a mirror that answered questions. She would stand before it and ask the same thing, over and over. Who is the fairest? And the mirror would answer her. It always confirmed what she needed to hear. She was the most beautiful. She was still enough. The reflection still held. The mirror did not lie. That was the problem. It could not be flattered, bribed, or persuaded. It simply told the truth. And for years the truth was kind to her. But the Queen kept asking, every day, the same question. And the fact that she kept asking tells you everything you need to know about how much she trusted the answer. Snow White was the king's daughter from his first marriage. Her mother had died when the girl was very young. Died, the stories say, having wished for a child as stark and vivid as a winter landscape. Snow, blood, ebony. As though beauty were the most important thing a mother could leave behind. The child grew, and as she grew, she became precisely what her mother had wished for. She was beautiful in a way that people remarked upon, not because she cultivated it, not because she performed it, but simply because she was young, and youth has a radiance that no effort can replicate. The Queen watched this happen. She watched it the way someone watches a tide coming in, slowly, inevitably, with the growing certainty that something is about to be lost. One morning, the Queen stood before the mirror and asked the question she had asked 1,000 times before, and for the first time, the answer changed. Snow White, the mirror said, was now the fairest in the land. We are told she turned pale with rage, but rage may not be quite the right word. What happens to a person when the thing they feared most is confirmed, not as a possibility, but as a fact? It is closer to grief. Grief for a version of herself that no longer exists. The mirror had not insulted her. It had simply moved on, the way the world moves on without apology and without malice. The Queen's decision was immediate. Snow White could not be allowed to remain. Not in the castle, not in the kingdom, not anywhere the mirror might see her. She summoned a huntsman and gave him clear instructions. Take the girl into the forest. Do not bring her back. The huntsman took Snow White into the woods. He was a man accustomed to following orders, but when the moment came, he could not do it. Whether it was conscience or cowardice, the story does not say. He told the girl to run, to disappear into the forest and never come back. He returned to the Queen with a lie and hoped it would hold. Snow White ran. She ran until the trees closed around her and the castle was no longer visible. The forest at night is not the gentle woodland of children's illustrations. It is vast, indifferent, and full of sounds that do not explain themselves. She was terrified. She was alone, and she had no idea what she had done to deserve any of it. Eventually she found a cottage, small, tucked into a clearing, as if it had grown there rather than been built. It belonged to 7 dwarfs who worked in the mountains. They let her stay, and she made herself useful in the way that displaced people often do, earning her place because she had no other claim to one. The Queen believed the problem was solved. She went back to the mirror with the confidence of someone who has removed an obstacle. The mirror told her the truth. Snow White was alive. She was living in the mountains, with the dwarfs, and she was still the fairest in the land. This is the pattern that defines the Queen. She does not learn. She does not adjust. She simply escalates. She disguised herself, first as a peddler, then as a comb seller, then as a farmer's wife, and travelled to the cottage herself. Each time she offered Snow White something appealing: laces that could be tied too tight, a comb laced with poison, small domestic weapons disguised as gifts. Each time the dwarfs returned home to find Snow White collapsed and revived her. They warned her, do not open the door, do not trust strangers, do not accept gifts. and each time Snow White opened the door again. Not because she was foolish, but because she was kind, and kindness sometimes looks like carelessness to people who have learned to be afraid. The final attempt was the apple. The queen prepared it herself, one half white, one half red. She ate the white half in front of the girl to prove it was safe. Snow White took the red half. She bit into it, and she fell. The dwarfs could not wake her this time. She was not dead, but she was not alive in any way they could reach. She lay perfectly still, her colour unchanged, her breath invisible. They could not bring themselves to bury her. Instead, they built a coffin from glass and placed her on a hillside where they could watch over her. Snow fell around it. Seasons passed. The glass did not cloud. The girl did not change. Time stopped for Snow White, but it did not stop for the world around her. The dwarfs grew older. The forest thickened. Birds landed on the coffin and flew away again. She became something between a person and a monument, a beautiful object preserved under glass, which, if you think about it, is exactly what the queen had always feared becoming herself. A prince passed through the mountains. He saw the coffin, he saw the girl inside it, and he asked the dwarfs to let him take her. The story says he fell in love at the sight of her, which is a difficult thing to examine too closely. He loved a silent, still, beautiful girl he had never spoken to. It is not the kind of love the story invites you to question, but it sits uneasily if you let it. As his servants carried the coffin, they stumbled. The jolt dislodged the piece of apple from Snow White's throat. She opened her eyes. She was alive. She was awake, and the world she woke into was not the world she had left. The prince offered marriage. She accepted. Whether out of gratitude or affection, the story does not say. The queen was invited to the wedding. She did not know whose wedding it was. She stood before her mirror one final time and asked the question. The mirror told her that the young queen was fairest now. Curiosity brought her to the celebration. Recognition came too late. The story ends her reign there, in a single moment of understanding, the realization that the thing she had spent her life fighting had simply happened anyway. Snow White is usually told as a story about good and evil, the beautiful girl and the wicked queen, but it might be more honestly understood as a story about what happens when someone's entire sense of self depends on a single quality, and that quality begins to fade. The queen is not evil in the way that monsters are evil. She is frightened. She is aging. She is watching the world redistribute its attention, and she cannot bear to be on the losing side of that redistribution. We live in a world that still asks the mirror's question, constantly. Social media, algorithms, the quiet metrics of visibility. Who is seen? Who is chosen? Who is replaced? The Queen's terror is not medieval. It is contemporary. It is the fear that your relevance is a limited resource, and that someone younger, fresher, and more effortless is always arriving to claim it. Snow White herself never competed. She never asked to be the fairest. She never sought the Queen's position or her power. The threat she posed was not intentional. It was existential. She did not need to do anything. She simply needed to exist. And that is perhaps the cruelest part of the story. The Queen's enemy was not a person. It was time. The mirror hangs in the palace still. It answers honestly. It always has. The tragedy is not that it told the truth. The tragedy is that the Queen believed the answer mattered more than anything else in the world. And by the time she understood that it did not, there was nothing left to save.